PC monitors, no matter what you're going for, in 2020, there are tons of options if you're into gaming. And a lot of that stems from what resolution you're gunning for, what your GPU can push to the monitor. So we're going to divide this one up into 3 tiers, 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. And we've got 3 recommendations for each tier. And to help guide me through that is, of course, Will Judd, our reviews expert, hardware reviewer. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Let's start with the value option at 1080p, the bare minimum, I guess, to get a good gaming monitor with good input lag. And I suppose we're looking at a TN panel, or is it IPS?
Yeah. So at this kind of price point, TN is the best option because it's still the most affordable monitor for manufacturers to produce. And yeah, that low input lag is really important for gaming. So our pick for 1080p 60 Hz is the BenQ Zowie RL2455. Now this is a really good pick because unlike an office monitor, its input lag is actually very low. It's around 13 milliseconds, and it has some handy gaming features. So for example, there's a mode which makes black areas appear more lighter on screen, so you can actually see if there's an enemy lurking there, for example. And it has a bunch of modes for different game genres to kind of optimize your settings very quickly.
So that's a 24-inch option. I suppose you're not going to get much more sort of in that price bracket, and it's a good resolution for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you're looking at 1080p, 27 inches is an option, but it does start to look a little bit grainy at that size.
Yeah, for sure. So if we're going to push the boat out a little bit, we're talking higher refresh rates from our monitors. More than 60 Hertz would be ideal if we can get away with it.
Yep.
What have we got next then?
So right now we have the AOC 24G2U or 24G2, depending on which region you're in. And this is a great entry-level 1080p 144 Hertz gaming monitor. So with that higher refresh rate, you'll find it's a lot easier to track moving targets in an FPS, for example. That fluidity really cuts down on input lag and makes it a lot more responsive for gaming. So unusually, this is actually an IPS monitor. Like traditionally, we have always recommended TN monitors for this price range and for this refresh rate. But nowadays, we're seeing a lot of modern IPS panels which actually deliver really strong performance kind of across the board. So with this, you're looking at 144 Hertz, decent motion resolution, low input lag, and you still have a good screen which looks nice for viewing films or viewing web content. That'll still have decent viewing angles, good color accuracy, and things like that. Unfortunately, IPS does have its disadvantages as well, so you're looking at a 4 millisecond gray-to-gray response time, which is slightly higher than you would expect from a TN panel, which is normally around 1 millisecond. Like I said, it is a lot better for content outside of fast-paced gaming. So if you have something like Civilization, where you're spending a lot of time kind of looking at the tableau of the land, then this will look a lot nicer, and it'll be available from a much wider viewing angle than a normal TN panel.
So this sounds like a good middle option if you're looking at 1080p. With 1080p, we're not expecting like top end features. A lot of the manufacturers have kind of moved to 1440p models, or especially 4K for stuff like HDR and all the extras like that. But what we do have in the 1080p field is higher refresh rates, and still higher with our third option, right?
Yeah, that's right. So our third option is the Samsung CRG5, and this option gives us the boost to 240 Hertz. So this provides a lot more fluidity. It's the monitor of choice for a lot of esports gamers, just because if you're playing something like Counter-Strike, where reaction times are key and tracking a moving target is very important, then having that extra 100 Hertz refresh is very, very key.
You've also picked a VA panel, kind of completing the trilogy of different tech types in this like 1080p category. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And it comes with all the pros and cons of that. So you get better blacks on this, I suppose. Pixel response isn't going to be quite as solid as a TN, but on the other hand, color depth is going to be far better.
Yeah, again, this is kind of a middle of the road pick. It kind of assumes that you're going to be spending some time not doing competitive gaming. Obviously, if that's your only focus and you don't really care about how web content looks or how watching films looks, then a TN panel is a better alternative. And we've listed a couple of those in the article as well.
Curved 27-inch as well. So
yeah,
it's a bit of a bonus.
Yeah,
but you've got to be prepared for the sort of relatively low DPI as well. So
yeah, that's true.
So in terms of budget options, what do we have in the 1440p sphere?
So for 1440p at the entry level, we're kind of recommending the ViewSonic VA2719 2K. So this is a very kind of bare bones IPS monitor. So you get a good color reproduction, wide viewing angles, which is great for slower paced games. The response times are not amazing, but you know, for an IPS panel and for this resolution, that's kind of understandable. If you had a similar amount of graphical horsepower and you did want that kind of fast response time and something that would be better for fast-paced gaming, then you know, we would recommend that you would go for 144 Hz at 1080p instead. So given that, I think this is a pretty acceptable trade-off.
So this is the sort of baseline 1440p monitor we'd recommend. Next up the ladder is what more features can we expect, like for the next monitor along?
So the next monitor is the LG 27GL850, and this is actually the monitor we've named as the best gaming monitor overall because we think it represents the best value for money, and it also offers an upgrade over 1080p 60 Hz, which is kind of the standard baseline for monitors, in 2 dimensions. So we have the resolution bump to 1440p, which is great. You get a lot more detail on screen, but you also get that 144 Hz refresh rate, which is very, very good for anything fast-paced. So no matter if you're playing, you know, a Civilization, a Counter-Strike, or anything in between, you're going to get a nice experience with this monitor at a reasonable price.
So as an IPS panel, this one's looking pretty good, but it's got a bunch of other features as well, right?
Right, yeah. So this is quite a modern IPS panel from LG. And it's one of the first to have a 1 millisecond response time, which is really impressive. It's normally something you would only see from a TN panel.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're getting that really good pixel response time and you're getting all the benefits of IPS in terms of color reproduction and viewing angles is really impressive. It also has G-Sync compatible support and FreeSync. So it's really kind of ticking all of the boxes. The one major stumbling block at the moment is availability. In theory, the monitor should be available around the 400-pound mark, but in terms of right now, as of recording this, it's more about 550, at which it isn't such a strong competitor. But other monitors are available using the same panel, and we've linked to some of those in the article. So if you can find anything around that 400 to 500-pound mark, we reckon that's a very good deal.
It also happens to support HDR as well. It's the first on our list to do so.
Yep.
Though the catch is 350 nits. Not really going to cut it, I don't think, for any real practical use. It's nice that it's there, but it's only going to give you a glimpse of what HDR can really do. Of course, with 1440p monitors, we can go another direction into the world of ultra-wide displays. And I guess this is our third option in that bracket, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we're looking at the Optics Mag 341CQ, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it is a really good ultra-wide monitor to be aware of. So unlike our previous monitor, this isn't the full 144 Hz. It only manages up to 100 Hz, and we're looking at a VA panel rather than an IPS. And that does provide very good contrast, which is a traditional strong point for VA panels, but you aren't looking at quite the same level of color accuracy or viewing angles that you would expect from an IPS.
So as kind of our top-end 1440p pick, it's quite a good one if you want something a bit more immersive with that curved ultra-wide screen. 100 Hz as well is a plus, not the highest we've got, you know, out of the picks we have, but it's definitely a good all-rounder, I think. And that leads us to the what if you do want a 4K display, and there's a lot here that's really invested in terms of giving you the top end of feature sets. 4K, what's our kind of entry-level display if you just want the baseline pixel count at that level?
So the baseline we're going for at the moment is the Nitro VG280K. So this is a really good option just for getting 4K without blowing your budget entirely on that, because obviously you're going to have a very powerful PC to run most games at 4K. So this is a good, not exactly budget, but good value option. It's an IPS screen, and it does support HDR10, which is great. It also has FreeSync support, which is really handy because you are limited to 60 Hz on this monitor. So if you're going to be running 4K games and you're kind of in that 30 to 60 or 40 to 60 range, then FreeSync can be really helpful there.
Yeah. Obviously, being fairly low end on the scale of 4K monitors, HDR support is there, but it's, owing to the IPS panel, it's not quite what we'd imagine it should be, right?
Yeah, unfortunately at this price point you can't really find a great HDR implementation. We have about 300 nits of brightness on this model, so it's not really bright enough to really make use of HDR content.
So supposing we want to take the next step up and maybe involve more console-orientated features, what would the next best option be?
So at the next tier, we're kind of looking at the Asus CG32EQ, which is a more console-specific monitor. It does have a lot of interesting features, but the most important things are it goes to a larger screen size, so this is a 32-inch model. We were looking at 27 inches before, and it also includes display HDR 600, which is where HDR kind of becomes worthwhile. You get a high enough peak brightness that you can actually start to appreciate HDR content. This model also supports FreeSync between 40 and 60 hertz, like our previous model, so you still have that to fall back on if your PC isn't quite capable of running at full 4K at 60 hertz consistently.
For the high price you're paying for this monitor, even as a 4K model with good HDR support, you're actually getting a lot of other luxuries built into it, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. The on-screen display is fantastic. It has such a depth of options there. And actually the base is really interesting as well, because it has a space for 2 controllers to sit. There's actually USB ports behind the base, so you can plug in your controllers, and it's kind of a nice all-in-one package for console gaming.
Console gaming, but obviously not everyone's going to be invested in that side.
Yep.
Some people might just want a PC monitor which ticks all the boxes as far as the resolution goes and just pure display quality. And in that sense, we've got another option, right? Yeah,
that's right. So there's a Philips Momentum monitor, which uses the same panel as far as we can tell, and it offers much of the same features. It has an ambient backlight like this Asus monitor does, but it doesn't include any of the console-specific stuff, and that's significantly cheaper. So if you're not interested in the console features, then the Philips monitor is a really good shout.
That makes sense. All of which leads us to the last in our 4K bracket. So the last one, what are we looking at here?
So this is the Acer Nitro XV273K, and this is the finest option, we think, for 4K at 144 hertz. So obviously it is a premium monitor. You're definitely paying a lot just to get that bleeding edge technology of having the highest commonly available resolution paired with a very high refresh rate. But you do get a pretty outstanding experience, which works well both for content creation and for competitive gaming.
So this is an IPS panel, right?
Yeah, so this is an IPS quantum dot panel, and it's top of the line. It's very modern, but it does have one major weakness, which is HDR. So this is only display HDR 400, which means the brightness is not great, and the HDR implementation isn't really worth using in my experience. I would say that if you want a great HDR experience, you can get a similar 4K 144 hertz monitor, but you are paying almost twice as much. You're looking at closer to £2,000, which is
yikes,
pretty outstanding.
Yes.
So if you wanted something which is good for content creation and also good for fast-paced gaming, this is an excellent option. But it still does have a few limitations that prevent it from being the ultimate gaming monitor.
All right. But it's got a bit of flexibility beyond that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So you actually get a calibration report with the monitor, so you can see exactly how on point it is. And you get a nice hood that goes around the screen, so that if you're doing color-sensitive work, the outside light won't be interrupting you, which is quite cool.
That's pretty high-end.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good choice for professionals that also want to slay demons on their day off. So the Nitro is a really impressive monitor, but it's actually the second monitor that Acer have produced at 4K 144 hertz. There is another option, which is the Predator X27. In fact, there is actually a recent revision, the X27P, and that has a much more comprehensive list of features. So you do get a fold backlight, and that allows for a much better implementation of HDR. You get G-Sync Ultimate as well, whereas the Nitro just has FreeSync. But for this monitor, you're looking at a price closer to £2,000, which is pretty incredible. And obviously, if you have the cash to spend, then it's going to be a great monitor. But due to the fact that it's so expensive and that backlight does require a fan to be on, we think this is a much more better value for money option.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think there you have it. Those are our 9 picks for every category. Thanks so much, Will, for guiding us through everything.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
So yes, if you did like this video and want to see more content like this, please feel free to like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications as any new video lands. We're on Twitter, as always. So we've got our handles down there. And of course, you can get this video at high quality on our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net. But from Will and myself, thanks for watching and see you next time.